We are going to take MRP 2, that is study section 2 of production management 2. At the end of this study section, we should be able to define MRP 2, state the features and characteristics of MRP 2, explain MRP 2 hierarchy, and number 4, we should be able to mention and explain form of MRP hierarchy. And the fifth one is that we should be able to highlight the advantages of MRP 2. While lastly, we'll be able to mention the advantages of MRP 2. We now move on to the definition of MRP 2. According to American Production and Inventory Control Society, IPICS, it defined MRP 2, which is material requirement planning, as a method for effective planning of all resources of a manufacturing system or company. It could also be said as a planning system that uses all the output of MRP1 or MRP, which is the material requirement planning system, to integrate production, marketing, and financial system. MRP2 could also be said as an integrated method of operational and financial planning for manufacturing company. It could therefore be concluded that MRP2 is not conclusively or exclusively a software function, but a marriage of people skill, dedication to database accuracy, and computer resource. We quickly move on to look at the features or characteristics of MRP2. Number 1, product design. The product design has to be done by the human skill and in collaboration with the computer skill in order for us to know what type of materials are needed for a particular product design. Then product specification, the type of products that need to be produced also need to be specified. Number 3, we look at quality control and quality assurance. When you talk about quality control, is to compare the actual standard with the expected standard, and the quality assurance will ensure that the actual standard is actually maintained. The expected standard, rather, is always maintained. Order management, this is the period for which materials are ordered and the time to which they are equally actually ordered. So we look at the order management as characteristic of MRP2. Purchasing of raw materials, getting the raw materials at the right time. Then number 6, inventory level. We should be able to maintain the minimum inventory level so that the company does not run out of scope. And at the same time, we don't need to have excess stock of raw materials so that it does not incur high holding costs. Cost calculation. That material MRP2 also enables us to calculate our costs to ensure that products are produced at the minimum cost. Then number 7, cost reporting. It enables us to report the cost to the appropriate management on how much it takes or what it takes to produce a unit of a product. And that gives room to number 9, which is the general accounting, to give record of all the total materials that are required in carrying out productive activities in the manufacturing sector. It also gives room for task computation and task calculation, and that is number 10, features. Number 11 is that it has a stimulation capacity that enables prediction to be made beforehand. These are some of the characteristics of MRP2. We now move on to look at the hierarchy of MRP2. And when you talk about the hierarchy of MRP2, you're talking about the flow of activities of MRP2. When you look at the point of the cursor, we have the strategic management, the market, and this will now go into our business plan. And also, we have budgeting, forecasting, stock level taking. It will also go into our master production schedule. In our master production schedule, it's going to show all the steps that are required in order to achieve a given product. But we need to take note that the business plan will integrate with the master schedule, and this will now give us the resources that is available, that is okay to achieve a given level of output. And this falls under the general planning of the firm's resources. Then once we attain the resources available, We can now move on to another stage, which requires production program. And this production program, you consider the quantity of product, the quality of product, the date of independent requirement per product. So all of these will form part of the production program. Then thereafter, you look at the bill of materials, the stock in progress, and handling costs. All of this will form material requirements. And all of these three variables, which is the production program, material requirements, and calculation of workload, they fall under detailed planning. That is the detailed planning of the products that need to be produced and not under the general planning. And once we achieve a proper detailed plan, we can therefore say that the resource is okay in order for us to achieve that objective. The last stage, which is called the execution, that is, we have planned for the product that is needed. We have planned for how we are going to sell the product, which is the strategic planning. We have planned how the product will come into existence, which is the detailed planning. We now move on to execution and control. In that case, we look at available materials, available capacity, the suppliers, and this will give us the release of materials and the purchase order that will be needed in order to achieve that particular product. And thereafter, you consider the monitoring of execution. That is, you cannot be producing a particular product without properly monitoring the execution of that product. And in monitoring the execution of that product, you want to bring in control, that keeping eye on the expected standard and the actual standard, ensuring that the product that is produced meets the expected standard. At the end of the day, we now have what is called measurement of performance. That is, did we achieve what actually we want to achieve? But in order for you to achieve control, you have to consider the internal and the external priority and the workshop schedule in order for you to have this control. And in taking measurement of performance, you bring in the principle of control. And when you bring in the principle of control, you are actually comparing the actual standard with the expected standard. So what we have explained so far, that moves from general planning to detailed planning and execution and control, is what we refer to as MRP2 hierarchy. We therefore move on to forms of MRP2 hierarchy. That MRP2 provides a general control structure that breaks the production control problem into a hierarchy based on time scale and product aggregation. There are many types of forms of MRP hierarchy, and they can generally be classified into three. One, long-range planning, intermediate planning, and three is short-time planning. Now, when you talk about long-term planning, what is long-term planning? The scope of this level of planning ranges from 6 months to 5 years, while a replanning may vary from monthly to an annual basis. It is conducted at the corporate level, and the decision is for the manufacturing firm to project long into the future. Therefore, long-range planning or long-term planning constitutes three items under this context. Long-term planning constitutes three items under this context. Number one, forecasting. This has to do with predicting future demand using the existing data. So when you talk about forecast, you are always talking about predicting the future demand of a product when you are taking into cognizance the existing data. It is important for determining capacity, tooling, and personnel. Number two, constituents of long-term planning is resource planning. This determines the capacity requirement over the long period. It could help to determine whether to build a new plant or to expand an existing one. Then the third stage of long-term planning is aggregate planning. This determines the level of production, staffing, inventory over time, over the long-term base on monthly or part families. We talk about intermediate planning, which is the second stage, because we said capacity planning can be divided into three: the long-term planning, the medium-term planning, or which is called intermediate planning, and the short-term planning. The intermediate planning involves planning different functions that takes place during the production pattern. Number one, demand management. That means intermediate planning involves demand management. And this is a process of converting the long-term aggregate forecast into a detailed forecast while tracking individual customer order. Number two indicator of intermediate planning is master production schedule. And this master production schedule can be described as MPS. The MPS gives the quantity and the due date for all parts that have independent demand. And independent demand refers to that demand for all end item and external demand for spare parts. Number three is to the fact that intermediate planning involves rough cut capacity planning. Rough cut capacity planning, which is RCCP. This provides a quick capacity check of a few critical resources to ensure feasibility of the MPS. And take note that the MPS is the master production schedule, which shows how all the steps that are required in order to carry out the production of a particular product. So RPPS uses a bill of resources for each end item on the MPS. Then another indicator of the intermediate planning is the bill of resources. And this bill of resources gives a breakdown of all the time in hours needed at each critical resource required to build a particular end item. One form of this bill of materials, which is called the BOM, is to provide a relationship between the end item, which is the finished product, and the lower level item, that is the constituent of the part of the end product, which you can refer to as work in progress. Then number five indicator of the intermediate planning is the material requirement planning, which is MRP, that was discussed in study section 1. That is, it conducts allocation and carry out the job release function. It does this by releasing material onto the shop floor and converting them into scheduled receipts. Its output is the job pool, which constitutes or consists of plant order releases on the job floor. And the last indicator of intermediate planning is the capacity requirement planning, CRP. And this provides a more detailed capacity check on the production plan compared to RCPP. And take note that RCPP is the rough cut capacity plan. And this provides a quick check. Because it provides a quick check, the RCCP provides a quick check, but RCP provides a detailed check. And that is why we said that the CRP is better than the RCCP, because the CRP, which is the capacity requirement planning, provides a detailed check on the product that is produced and on the planned product in order to achieve the predetermined objective of the firm. We now look at capacity requirement planning, because we said that the capacity requirement planning provides a detailed check on the product plan and on the product that is produced. Therefore, capacity requirement planning has subcategory, and this subcategory include plan order release. We have to plan the order that we got from our customers. How are we going to release them? Or is it on batches? Is it on slots? Is it on containerized? Is it on carton? That is, the capacity requirement planning enables us to understand the plan order release. 2, existing work in progress position. It enables us to know the product that are still undergoing production capacity. The product that is still undergoing production capacity that has not attained finished product, we will be able to know their position and the level of production which they have attained, either 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%. Capacity requirement plan also involves routing data and capacity, and it enables us to look at lead time for all work center. And when you talk about lead time for all work center, you're talking about the time for which product is expected to move into the center and the time which the product actually got to the center. Then we move on to the last stage of it, which is the third time planning or the short-term control. Short-term control comes into play whenever a job is released to the shop floor or when a purchase order is released to vendor, so as to ensure on-time completion with correct quantity and specification. Short-term control serve two functions. Number one, jobs dispatching. This provides rules for arranging the queue in front of each workstation on the plant floor so that due date integrity is maintained while machine utilization is kept high and manufacturing time are kept low. Short-term plan also include input-output control, and this provides an easy way to check the release against available capacity on the shop floor. It does this by monitoring the level of work in progress at each work center. We move on to the next stage, which is the advantages of material requirement planning. And material requirement planning can also be described as MRP 2. What are the advantages? The benefit as follows: better control of inventory, improved scheduling, productive relationship between the supplier for design and engineering, better quality and quality control for financial and costing, improve cash flow through quicker delivery, accurate inventory record, management business rule for strategic planning. Sales and marketing can incorporate sales goals and fit properly into the capacity. It builds relationship between the vendors and the vendee, and inventory shortage are prevented to the barest minimum. What are therefore the disadvantage or the constraint of MRP 2? Now, these are some of the constraints or disadvantages of MRP 2. Short-term shortcomings from MRP 2 system may include the following. The planning module uses average of length of time to purchase or manufacture lead time, and for quantity usually purchased on a purchase order or manufactured on a workload lot site. Poor information and lack of understanding of the impact of average lot size. Number 3, MRP 2 does not address how to determine lot size. He only talk about what to produce, but he did not discuss in details on how to get the lot size. Number 4, MRP system does not inherently deal with uncertainty. It does not take cognizance of uncertainty. He believes that everything is certain, that when they say a given level of product, that level of product will be achieved. So MRP 2 does not take cognizance, does not put into consideration some degree of uncertainty. Number 5 is that MRP 2 assumes constant and known lead time. When you talk about constant and known lead time, MRP 2, which is the requirement and material requirement planning, believes that it knows the time for which product will be ordered, and it also knows the time that product will be supplied. And this presumption, this premonition may be wrong for you to know the mind of another person. So MRP 2 assumes constancy by presuming to know the lead time, which is the time for which a product will be ordered and the time for which a product will be supplied. MRP 2 does not provide incentive for improvement. It believes in a dogmatic way for people to work. It does not provide incentives for improvement in workers' performance. These are what we are expected to know in study section 2. We'll meet again in the next class when we discuss study section 3. Thank you.